When a strange story gets told, there's always a chance it could become legend. Legend can push and pull at the boundaries of that original story, alter its details, twist it into a different shape. But more than anything else, what sets legend apart from the stories that fade away is that they grow with time, with retellings. Legends grow like gnarled trees from that original seed of strange story. And what exactly makes some stories able to flourish into legend while others fall through the cracks of memory and forgotten? Well, critical to the growth of any tree is the soil in which its seed is buried, the source from which it rises. And for strange stories, the same holds true. The source of the story is critical. Where did the story come from? Who's telling it? Why could they be telling it? This source is so important that it can make a story be immediately dismissed, forgotten, eye-rolled into oblivion. Or it can give that exact same story credibility, can cause people to consider taking the story seriously. And most importantly, that source, that soil, can give a strange story the ability to grow. So then, what kind of soil sprouted the legend of a giant amphibious bipedal river serpent that swallows little children whole? Well, that be the soil of Brittlebone, Ohio. If you crack open a search bar and type in the word cryptids, the creature known as the Brittlebone Beast will make its appearance right there, just beneath Bigfoot and the Chupacabra, glued to Brittlebone, Ohio, the same way Nessie is glued to Loch Ness in the Scottish Highlands. If you're a listener who is unfamiliar with what a cryptid is, just to make sure our definitions are covered, a cryptid is an animal or creature that has been claimed to exist, but whose existence is disputed or not recognized by science. I just named a few of the main event headliners: Bigfoot, Chupacabra, the Loch Ness Monster. But for each one of these household name creatures, there are 100 other, less famous cryptids said to be lurking around in our world, staying forever just beyond the grasp of scientific discovery. So as we start this trilogy on Brittlebone's cryptid, just in case there are any skeptics that are rolling their eyes too hard on this subject, here is a wild fact that's important to keep in mind as we go forward, just to ensure that any eye rolling doesn't strain the skeptic's vision too hard that they become unable to clearly see the subject at hand. Because the fact is, there are absolutely genuine cases of cryptids turning out to be very real creatures that we now just call animals. For example, the coelacanth is a monstrous 6.5-foot long fish that was believed to have been extinct for 66 million years before one was discovered very much alive in the Indian Ocean in 1938. the kangaroo once inspired claims from early explorers of the Australian continent of a bizarre bipedal deer that hopped like a frog with two heads, one between its shoulders and one gazing out from its stomach. The mountain gorilla was responsible for centuries of ape-man legends not too different from Bigfoot tales. The giant squid was believed to be a myth of the sea similar to mermaids. And, believe it or not, even the humble platypus was once a cryptid that existed its way into scientific reality. Matter of fact, even when a platypus corpse was presented to scientists in 1798, it was believed to be a hoax made of stitched together animal parts. It required capturing a live specimen to prove that the animal was not a Frankenstein fiction, but was in fact a very real duck-billed egg-laying mammal with venomous feet that sweats milk with powerful antibacterial properties with, believe it or not, fur that glows in the dark beneath UV lighting. All that to say, it's worth putting in quality consideration before immediately blasting the idea that all cryptids are imaginary, because as proven with the platypus, sometimes reality embraces the weird with wide open arms. But if reality ever gets in the mood to bring another one of these strange creatures, currently categorized as a cryptid, into the realm of scientific light and concrete, blood and bone, claw and teeth life, we should all hope that it leaves the Brittlebone Beast alone. The cryptid creature rumored to be stalking the riverside in my hometown has gone by a few different names. Most popularly, it's known as the Brittlebone Beast, though I have seen the Beast moniker sometimes dropped, with the creature simply being referred to as Brittlebone, if you'd care to be on a first-name basis with the thing. But to avoid any confusion between the name of the cryptid and the name of the whole town, we will keep calling it the Beast, and I will use the creature's other most popular name. Due to the claims that it's been witnessed in the same forested river valley that the cul-de-sac sits in, the creature has developed a proximity-based association to the Wayward Circle, and the cryptid has been called from time to time the Wayward Wyvern, which as a name is equal to Brittlebone Beast in alliteration. If you don't know what a wyvern is, that's perfectly acceptable, you're probably normal. By definition, a wyvern is a winged bipedal creature of legend, similar to a dragon, but with wings instead of front arms, like the anatomy of a bat. So technically speaking, and we're diving into deep levels of fantasy lore terminology here, by definition, a dragon has 4 legs plus wings coming out of its back. But if you need an example of how frequently these two kinds of mythical creatures are confused, the quote-unquote dragons in the Game of Thrones TV series have 2 hind legs and 2 wings, no front arms, making them technically wyverns by the standards of fantasy lore, though Mother of Wyverns doesn't exactly pack a very catchy punch. So how exactly does a legendary bat dragon end up on the foggy riverbanks of an Ohio Rust Belt town in the heartland of the good old US of A? Well, As we'll uncover fully over the course of this 3-episode trilogy, the thing said to be lurking in Brittlebone's stretch of the Great Miami River got there the same way all great cryptid lore becomes embedded in the grounds that the creature is said to haunt. With a long legacy full of disputed claims, allegations of mistaken identification, and, of course, heavy skepticism about levels of sobriety. A solid visual description of the Brittlebone Beast is difficult to pin down. In curious cryptid fashion, none of the alleged sightings of the creature align perfectly in their description of what was seen. Generally speaking, the beast has become accepted as a scaled, unnaturally tall bipedal river monster. A beast that will stray from the water's rapids to stalk around in the town's forested riverbanks. But in order for us to build up a truer form of the creature, we will stroll through each reported sighting of the beast, each case that has made the monster Brittlebone's most popular pillar of strangeness. And there's no better place to start that journey than at the beginning, the first reported sighting of the creature. Unlike a number of other tales of cryptids and otherworldly entities whose origins are nebulous, scattered, impossible to trace, every source that writes about the beast, from books cataloging American monsters to ancient Tumblr posts written in Courier font, all agree that the origin story of this wayward wyvern can be traced back to an old, weathered document over 125 years old, which is not only one of the coolest ways for a legend to begin, but also one of the most dramatic ways to say an old newspaper article. Nearly all texts that discuss the Brittlebone Beast feature some version of the following newspaper article's story. It is the first known documented sighting of the creature, and this is the text pointed to as responsible for releasing the legend of the Brittlebone Beast. According to the Valley Chronicle, in May of 1885, 12-year-old brother and sister James and Josephine Schultz were playing in the woods near the banks of the Great Miami River. They were frolicking as you'd imagine children in 1885 would frolic in a small rocky creek when, suddenly, without warning, a massive snake-like creature came up from out of the river, tearing across the riverbank and through the woods on two long, powerful front limbs. The creature snatched up the brother and drug him, screaming, helpless, 100 yards into a large hole in the ground. All his sister could do was shriek. In 1885, there wasn't a crazy amount of noise pollution, and little Josephine's screams carried on the clear air. Around a dozen men working nearby clearing trees heard the child's blood-curdling cry and bolted towards it. Finding little Josephine in a state of shock, they could coax nothing more from her than the words snake and James. Words accompanied by a shaking little finger pointing down a long path of devastated brush. The men followed the path of disturbed soil to its end, A hole, like a groundhog's hole, the size of a small cavern, was dug straight down into the dirt. The men, still a bit rattled from the little girl's demeanor and daunted by the size of the hole, were reluctant to hurry into the black pit. They sent half their number back to the worksite to retrieve arms, axes, and the other workers to bolster their number. The men that remained there at the hole shouted James's name down into the earth, calling out for a response from the child. But it wasn't a response from James that emerged, but rather a nightmare, a myth burst to life. An alarmingly enormous serpentine creature launched suddenly from its lair, knocking the men backwards. The description of the creature, according to the article, judged it to be over 15 feet long, snake-like but massive, with a midsection as stout as an ox. It had 2 long front arms as thick as timbers, and it carried itself on 2 short, stocky hind legs, powerful enough to launch a creature of such incredible size at such an incredible velocity out of its hole. Many versions of the tale claim that the thing had stood erect upon emerging, moving with startling speed on the strength of its back legs alone. The entirety of the creature's body was covered in scales, dark gray and green, though not shiny like a snake's, but rather a leathery, amphibious texture like frog skin. Its head was lizard-like, with a long forked tongue, and it was either gills along its neck or the ridges of small bat-like wings laying flat against its serpentine body as the creature rumbled past the men, shaking the earth with its size. Moving in a kind of slither scamper, the beast escaped towards the river and slipped away into its waters. The men, understandably not eager to stand in the monster's way. The newspaper article states that the details of this incredible sighting were fully vouched for by every single one of the 6 men of respectable reputation who had remained at the hole to witness the creature in the flesh. Which leads to perhaps the part of the legend most worthy of lasting horror. When the men sent back to the worksite returned to the scene, reinforced with a mob of nearly 20 armed citizens, the townsfolk finally braved going down into the creature hole, looking to find young James or recover what they could of him. They discovered that the hole, driven straight down into the ground, flattened underneath the earth into a length of horizontal tunnel, just large enough to fit the proportions of the massive creature. The article says the burrow only ran for a short while before it ended in a dirt wall. The lair was empty. No lingering evidence of the beast, and nothing remained of James. This origin story that spawned the Brittlebone Beast is told with minor changes and shifting details across a spectrum of sources. Books, podcasts, articles online, all vouching for a story published in a 125-year-old newspaper article, which itself vouches for the story of what sounds like a pre-turn of the century angry mob. So, where exactly does that leave us on the issue of the source of the story, the seed that sprouted the legend? Well, as it turns out, the original text of the article itself is, on the surface, surprisingly easy to track down, hosted of all places on the website of the county's Historical Society. However, the Historical Society site does not feature actual images of the newspaper or its article. Rather, it has a recreation of the article, typed up like a blog, citing a dedication to the quirky history of the area. The newspaper article itself, I can't find an image of anywhere. I've tried to place a call to the Brittlebone Public Library to see if they might have an article in storage, as local libraries typically preserve an area's printed history, including old newspaper pressings, and I was hoping that, similar to the police department getting me a copy of the Barker's police report, maybe I could make my paranormal podcaster dreams come true by sifting through some microfiche in the back corner of a dusty old library when I got to Ohio. But what I got instead was this message.
We're sorry. You have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service.
I've discovered instead that the town library has been defunded, closed, and that dream is dead. So as far as the source of an origin story goes, we're reliant upon an online blog recreating the words of a century-old newspaper that itself was reliant upon the words of an angry mob. What does the article say happened in the aftermath of the event? Was there a funeral? Was a boy considered missing? Was a search party organized? No idea. These are questions neither the newspaper article nor the legend as it persists today seem interested in offering any answers for. The only part of the 1885 article that touches on the fallout of a mythological beast showing up and swiping one of the town children out of existence is in its final few passages, where the article ends its coverage by noting that all 20-some citizens that had become involved in the incident saw the size of the hole in the ground, saw that it was empty, and with its last remark, the article states simply that, quote, "The animal will be watched for and killed on sight, if possible." I will admit, I'm not super used to reading newspapers from the 1800s, but I have to say the article reads more like a wanted poster than actual news coverage. I'd say we get a description of the perpetrator, the beast, a number of eyewitnesses confirming the event, and instead of giving us details about the family or lives of the children affected by this literally monstrous tragedy, the 1885 article kind of just uses the disappearance of the boy as if saying, this monster is wanted for kidnapping. And so here is where we really crack into the seed that planted this legend in Brittlebone's River Valley. The Historical Society website offers a simple reason as to why this story never talks about the aftermath of the event. In fact, why it would be impossible to talk about the aftermath of the event. The site says it's because the 1885 article was a deliberate work of folklore, a piece of fiction written to propose truth. Simply put, the site says the article was a cautionary tale printed to warn about the dangers of kids playing too near the river and becoming lost in its currents. There was never a real James or Josephine Schultz playing in the forest. Never a real beast. Never a real angry mob full of crap pants townsfolk that had witnessed the impossible. In the same way, the boy who cried wolf cautions that if you're caught lying and lying over again, that people will eventually not care if you're eaten by a wolf. The origin story of the Brittlebone Beast was written to caution against straying too close to dangerous currents that can and will whisk you away without a second thought. And maybe this is the reason how dated the article is, how it's categorized as a cautionary tale, plus how difficult it is to imagine an animal of that size actually being anything other than a work of folklore that leads most paranormal and cryptozoological tellings of the Brittlebone Beast legend to skim the details of this origin story. Don't get me wrong, the high notes of this tale almost always get played. A giant monster from the 1800s, a boy lost in the grasp of a mysterious river creature, an angry mob left with torch and pitchfork in hand. All very cinematic, compelling cues that aim to prove that this creature has been stalking this land for who knows how long. But most accounts that you'll find of the Brittlebone Beast legend don't really delve any further into these details, because any story about the beast is in a hurry to get to the most infamous, enduring part of the legend. After all, an old newspaper article may have stamped the image of the creature into that foggy river valley, but a cautionary tale printed over a century ago could not have sown the seeds of this modern cryptid phenomena alone. The idea of the beast as purely a work of cautionary fiction became rattled to its core on a night that a life was forever turned sideways. A night that cemented the creature into the foundation of Brittlebone's legacy of strangeness. A night when a documented encounter occurred, causing wild claims to come from a source that made people lend an ear, tilt their head, and truly consider the spine-chilling possibility that there was something else living amongst them. Next time.
Is not available. At the tone, please record your message. When you've finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
I should mention that while we cover the legend of the Brittlebone Beast, I'm not just waiting to go to Ohio. I'm preparing to go. The way I figure, if I'm flying all the way back home, we're going to make a tour out of it. I want to verify the Wayward Staircase in person. I want to see the Driscoll Munitions Factory, inspect the Crybaby Bridge, wonder where the Brittlebone Beast is said to wander. But I wouldn't be doing the exploration justice if I didn't try one more thing. Hi, my name is Chance. I'm calling to speak with you about one of your properties. Please feel free to give me a call back at your earliest convenience at this number. I'd love to talk with you about the address at 816 Wayward Court in Brittlebone. Thanks so much for your time. Hope to hear from you. Bye-bye. Now, I figure if we're going to take this show on the road and into town, we might as well try to go where only police investigators have gone. We might as well try to host our own investigation. If possible, maybe even a paranormal investigation inside the house at 816 Wayward Court.